Okay, so last week we were talking about area, and we talked about the area of irregular shapes. And this paper should look familiar to you. There were several people who had lots and lots of questions about this paper, so I've decided to give this as a participation grade. I'm going to go over this with you, and we're going to spend a few more days doing the area of irregular shapes, and then we'll try again with a different paper for a grade. So if you have any questions, always remember to ask. Okay, so when we look at these irregular shapes, we have to look at this and try to find two rectangles, a way to separate this so there are two rectangles. Okay, so when we separate this, we'll notice that we're going to have to do some figuring. So I can go ahead and I can draw a line right across here. And I have 1, 2 rectangles. So I need to find the area of the separate rectangles. So I need to look at them as if they are two separate figures. So when I do that, I can take a piece of paper here and I can go ahead and say, all right, so this is the first rectangle that I need to look at. So I notice it is a 7 by 5. Well, I know when I'm finding area, I'm finding square units, and so I need to multiply. So I've got 7 times 5. So I can even go ahead and write that in here. 7 times 5 equals, and I know 7 times 5 equals 35. Now I need to look up here, and this says millimeters. So I need to put millimeters squared. So I've got 35 millimeters squared for the top part. Now I need to look at the bottom part. Well, the bottom part I have a 5 and a 3. So I've got 5 times 3, which I know is 15, and I know this is millimeters squared. So now I've got 35 and 15. So in order to find the area of both of these altogether tells me to add, and so I add these up. And I've got 50 millimeters squared. Okay? So I hope that's making sense to you. So once I find the two rectangles, I have to find each one of their area, and then I have to put the areas together, which means to add. Now with this one, it's going to be a little different. It's going to be a little more thought process for me. Okay, so now I've got to find the two rectangles. Well, now I've got a rectangle here and I've got a rectangle here. If I take a look at the top rectangle, I'm noticing that I don't know what this side is. I know that the whole thing is 4, but I can't say this piece is 4. This piece is not 4. So I'm going to have to figure out this piece. So I've got this piece right here. I know what that piece is. Well, when I split this rectangle up down below, I know that this piece and this piece are going to be equal. So this piece is going to be 3. This piece is going to be 3. So I know that these two are equivalent. Remember the lines we put in there? Those hash marks tell me that those two are the same length. So then when I look at this rectangle, I know that these two, because these two are parallel, they're opposite each other, these two are going to be equal. So I know that this piece equals 2. So if this piece equals 2, then what's this piece going to be? Well, I have to have this number and this number equal the whole amount. So 2 plus something gives me 4. This is the whole thing. The 4 is the whole thing. This is one piece of the whole. So now we have to figure out this other piece. Well, I know 2 plus 2 gives me 4. So this is going to be 2. So when I'm figuring the top part, I'm not going to figure the 4 because this small piece is not 4. I'm going to take the 2 times the 2, so I've got 2 times 2, which will equal 4 millimeters squared. Okay, so I took that hole and I had to break it up. I had to figure out, how am I going to find this small piece? Well, these two, because they're opposite, they're equivalent, since I know that these are rectangles. These two are equivalent too, because these two are opposite. These two, there's a 2 here and a 2 here, and 2 plus 2 gives me the total, which is 4. That whole length is 4. Okay, a lot of you are still taking that full length. Well, when I break it up, it's no longer 4. You have to be careful with that. Okay, so let's take a look at the bottom. So now I know with the bottom I need length times width. Well, length is 2, width is 3. So that would be 6 millimeters squared. So now I have 4 and 6, which would give me a grand total of 10 millimeters squared. So number 2 should be 10 millimeters squared. All right. Now with this one, I can break this one into 2 rectangles. Break it right there. Okay, so I'm going to look at this rectangle first. So I'm not going to be looking at this rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and cover that up. I hope this gives you a technique to use so it's not so confusing. So we've got 6 times 5, length times width, equals 30 millimeters squared. So now I can move my paper over here, and now I've got length is 2, width is 5, so I've got 10 millimeters squared. So I can take these two, 30 plus 10, give me 40 millimeters squared. So that's the total. Okay, I hope you're seeing this a little bit better. All right, now with this one, again, I'm going to have to draw my line, find my 2 rectangles. All right, this first rectangle, the top one, if I cover this up, the top one is length of 2, width of 7, equals 14 millimeters squared. But then, when I look at this one's broken up. So I know that this small piece is 2. This small piece is also going to be 2. So what would this large piece be? I've got 2 plus something equals 6. So what plus 2 gives me 6? If I have 2 here, I need the rest of this to equal 6. 4. So this 6 is broken up. So it's kind of like when we did, when you used to break numbers apart. So we can break 6 apart into 2 and 4. 2 plus 4 equals 6. So it's kind of decomposing the number. So we've got the 2 here, we've got the 4 here, and that gives us the total of 6. So the length of this side is 4, the width is 3, so it's 12 millimeters squared. So I've got 14 and 12. So 4 plus 2 is 6. 1 plus 1 is 2. So I've got 26 millimeters squared. All right, let's take a look at number 5. So number 5, we can draw our line right across here. We've got length times width, 5 times 6 equals 30. That pen is just not wanting to work. All right, so here we've got length of 3, width of 4 equals 12. So we've got 30 plus 12, which is 42 millimeters squared. That one's pretty cut and dry. We don't have any that are broken apart like we did up here. All right, so this next one, I'm going to draw my line to create my two rectangles. I've got length times width. 8 times 5 is 40. I've got my length is 6, my width is 3, that's 18. So I've got 40 plus 18, which is 58 millimeters squared. Again, we don't have anything broken up there. Number 7 is a little tricky. Okay, if we go ahead and draw our line right here. All right, so do I have 9 here or do I have 10 here for my length or my width? My length is going to be 7. Well, if you take a look here, I've drawn the line so that it's 9. So this is no longer 10. This part is 9. So what would this part be? If this is 9, I need 9 plus something gives me 10. So what would that be? 9, 1 more gives me 10. So this is going to be 1. And this part is going to be, I can cross this 10 out and make this 9 and put my total as 10. See how I did that? So I've got 9 plus 1 gives me 10. So that's still 10 all together. But when we cut this piece off, this is just going to be 9. So I changed that. I decomposed that number to 9 and 1. All right, so my length is 7. My width is 9. So my area is 63. I'm going to have to draw this one out here. My length is 5. My width is 1. So the area is 5. So 63 and 5 gives me a total of 68 millimeters squared. Okay? All right. Let's go ahead and break this one up right here. We've got length times width. 4 times 8 is 32 millimeters squared. And then we have length of 2, width of 6, that equals 12. So we've got 32 plus 12 gives me 44 millimeters squared. All right, so now we're going to go on to number 9. Number 9 I can cut right here, and I've got my two rectangles, and I can see my two rectangles. I've got 1, I've got 2. So you can use a piece of paper if you still need that in order to see the rectangles and do them one at a time. So I've got length times width, 4 times 5 equals 20. And then I've got length of 8, width of 5, that equals 40. 20 plus 40 gives me 60 millimeters squared. All right, let's take a look at number 10. Number 10, I've got to draw my line to create my two rectangles. I've got one here, a 6 by 4, and one here, a 2 by 3. So length times width, 6 times 4 equals 24. And then we've got 3 times 2. 3 times 2 equals 6. So we've got 24 plus 6 equals 30 millimeters squared. All right. So I hope that that helps clear up some confusion. And just, I want you to remember that if you have to cut one in half, it's no longer this number, okay? That's like saying 4 divided by 2 is 4. Well, we know that's not true. When you divide something, if you divide and you have a piece of it taken off, you have to take a look at that number again and see how those sides, how they fare when you cut them. So like with this 4, we had 2 here and 2 here. With this one, we took 10 and we had 9 here and 1 here. So you just have to evaluate and take into consideration how that splits up. All right? So tomorrow we're going to go over some more of this irregular shapes with area, and we'll just keep at it, and hopefully by Wednesday, after going over it a 3rd time, then you'll be ready to do some on your own. All right? Have a great evening. Remember, keep watching, stay curious, and always keep learning.